thought I would start with kind of the most obvious question, and that is, what is filmmaking during a pandemic like, um, especially as a student?
It's definitely been stressful, but
Yeah.
rewarding too. It's really nice to see the I don't know how to phrase it. This the stress pay off. It's nice to see the stress pay off in a way, because it does take a little bit more planning. We've had actors that couldn't do it because of COVID. We've had actors that had to drop out because they were symptomatic, things like that. And so it adds another layer of things that you have to check for, and make sure are working, and already something with a lot of moving gears. But now that it's all starting to come together, it's a lot more rewarding.
What are some of the obstacles that others have faced? Just are you all meeting up to film, or are some working remotely in your group? How are you guys sort of solving those issues?
I can go ahead and try to answer that one. Remote work's definitely been a lot harder. I'm remote, I'm not in SLO. And so being able to, uh, communication isn't very hard, but sharing data files and sharing project files makes it extremely hard. And it really impedes the process when we have to wait hours and hours to send footage to each other.
Yeah, that must be frustrating. Is there anybody who, our saying is the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. So is there anybody that has an example of some way that the limitations actually made their film a better film?
Yeah, I was gonna say that in some ways, like some of the things that are kind of a struggle, like files and actors getting COVID, are kind of opportunities for like innovation and kind of creative problem solving on the spot. Um, I think that from the initial scripts, a lot of people had to modify it for their films. And even like on the sets or where people are filming, there's been opportunities for like the actors and the directors or producers to kind of put their heads together and collaborate, to make the scene or to make the actors comfortable with the scene and figuring out how to shoot it in some of the limited locations that we have available to us.
Yeah.
I think another thing to just add to that is, like for my film specifically, we wanted to get two youngish boys, like age like 8 to 15 probably. And because of COVID, a lot of parents are pretty wary about having their kids spend a lot of time with, in person with college students. We don't exactly have the best reputation for being super COVID safe, which, makes sense. But because of that, a lot of kids that normally would audition didn't end up auditioning for this quarter. And so for our group we had to end up casting two people who were I think both like 21, 22, and just pretend that they're in high school, which actually worked out a lot better because they have a lot of experience and they were able to improv on the spot. They were able to memorize their lines super quickly, and we barely had to give them any direction at all just because they're so well versed in film and theater and stuff like that. And so I think that limitation made ours a lot better because they knew what they were doing and it just was a lot easier to deal with them.
Great. Oh, Bloss, are you trying to say something?
Sorry about that. I must have double tapped it. Piggybacking off of that though, we also needed like kids around 8 to 15, and we basically got a connection through like a professor, and then we found like just a bunch of kids who have been isolated and went to the same school. And since we were gonna shoot at a like a soccer field, basically lots of these kids were just really up to it. They were so excited to actually be able and hang out with each other and respect like social distance and be like mindful of it. But they were just yearning to have that like I don't know, social aspect back. And so I do think that like reflected in our film. They definitely are just there shooting the breeze and having fun with it all. Yeah, so
I wonder if that's the same for a lot of you guys too, because I imagine in a lot of your classes, they're virtual. So does this collaborative, environment has that been, I don't know, sort of an oasis for some or?
Yeah,
Sophie?
I can definitely talk about that. We have had to film like a party scene in ours, and obviously we had to be really safe, and it was outside in my backyard, and it was just like nice to like have us all meet and like actually pretend like we were at a party. Um, I had my roommates be extras too, so it was like we were hosting a real party, even though it was for the film. So it was kind of nice to just all get together and actually collaborate. And like I've never met the people in my group until then in person. So it was like very weird, but also so nice to be like, oh my God, like I know everything about you, but hi. So yeah, it was definitely, I think it was a joy for the actors, but also I think you can't discredit it was also a joy for us. I think all of my group mates can say the same. To just be in person and actually talk to someone, not through a screen.
Great. So I'd love to hear more about the casting process. So typically we have a casting session where actors from all over the community come to campus and audition, but this was the first time we had a virtual casting session. So maybe somebody from the casting team could talk about that.
Yeah, I can try speaking on that for the casting team. I feel like a lot of basically kind of starting with casting, we have to get kind of the information out there that we are looking for people for 7 different short films. So I had to join the SLO Auditions Facebook page, so we can just kind of get the word out from people around the area, basically explaining when our auditions are and having to make it clear that these are going to be Zoom auditions. And so it was definitely difficult after people emailed us headshots and resumes, kind of like sorting out what times they could come to the Zoom meeting and giving them all the same Zoom link. I also made a Google form, basically having time slots for people to sign up for. So it was definitely different in that aspect where I feel like it was kind of hard explaining our situation and how we were going to set this up. So it was really experimenting. So I think that that was very interesting, and having to keep track of emails is difficult when we're constantly getting a flow of all of them responding to everybody. I think it was more difficult in a way because you're kind of having to judge people over Zoom too. It's like how are they going to interact with others? You can't really test chemistry or anything professional like that. So you're really taking kind of a gamble when it comes to who you're going to cast. And obviously things can change. People can realize, oh, our schedules don't really work. I can't come up for this weekend if they're out of town. At least for our film, we had an actor. He was amazing. Sergio, he came all the way from LA 2 weekends in a row just to film for free, basically acting in our short film. And it was amazing kind of getting to meet these people that you saw over Zoom and you're like, yeah, that they could be perfect for what we're looking for.
Did anybody have to, I know the Ocean Street team worked with friends and not actors. What's that experience been like for you guys?
I think that at first we were a little bit hesitant to rely fully on people who didn't have much acting experience, which is pretty much all 5 of the actors we're using in our film. But as soon as we realized that that's the situation we were going to have, we started seeing it as more of a benefit because everyone on set has this chemistry with each other that we can kind of work with, and everyone is giving each other comments. It's more of an open conversation, between the crew and between all the actors who are involved. And, we were fortunate to have enough connections within our group to be able to cast the entire, to cast everyone, in the film in a pretty genuine role. We have a mother playing, or she's in her role, or she's the actual mother of the main character in real life. So that has been cool. and just a number of connections like that we've started to use to our advantage, I think.
Yeah. So these films are made by, this is a collaboration between two classes. It's the 341, which is cinematic process, and then Art 483, which is advanced video production. So the scripts are written in another ISL class is the 340 storytelling, then brought to this class, pitched. So I'd love to hear from, well, I guess I'd love to hear from some of the Art 483 students, some of the video students, what attracted you to some of the films that you are working on?
Well, I know for me specifically, I've always wanted to do something with an ocean script, some kind of beach movie, and so I saw this as a perfect opportunity to try and play around with that and experiment. So that was what got me interested in choosing Ocean Street.
Just all the films in general, I think there's a sense of relatability to it, especially coming from another student writer. And with Ocean Street, working on that film, it was really rewarding to come from like using our friends in the community and kind of adapting the script to make sense in that realm. And that was really fun to work with.
Yeah, that story was originally set in Santa Cruz, but of course, you guys had to modify it, and you decided to set it in, I think, Cayucas. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's been great. The community is they're so welcoming to it, and they're all very excited for this film to come out. And I think that they're happy that we're using, their town and their community for this film.
Great. I'd love to hear also from the ISLA 341 students, like, what motivated your scripts? What was the inspiration for the stories that eventually became your screenplays?
My film is kind of about my own experience as being a white passing Latino, and like, I don't know, it just basically the microaggressions that kind of happen being a white passing Latino, and like how people kind of, have these like stereotypes built in your head of what a Latino is supposed to look like and what they're supposed to do, and in reality what they are. And I guess I don't know, it was really easy to kind of like go in and like grab those types of feelings and then just like splay it out onto a screenplay, which is really fun for me. I don't know, I haven't really dived into that type of thing, and I had a really good time with it. So it's really cool to see it on screen.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Blas said and then the previous question for the 483 class. I think for us, one of the discussions that we did have is that our script is an opportunity to like have that conversation, especially attending a predominantly white institution. I think having for our film specifically, backseat questions does address those issues, and just attending Cal Poly and having a lot of hate crimes or racist incidents within the past 4 years of attending this college, I definitely think that it's important to have these conversations, whether that be like in a film or just in general.
Yeah, and I'll go. For my screenplay, I wrote Love Wins. It was and I'm a non-major, like I'm poli-sci, so like this was the first screenplay I pretty much ever wrote. But I tried to think about what movies I gravitate towards and why. And naturally, I'm half Iranian, and anytime I see an Iranian character on anything, I'm watching Blacklist right now, and one of the girls is Iranian, and I love it, and I automatically relate, and it's something that for me, I start to tap way more into the film because I know that their background relates to my own. And I thought, why not? Let's put an Iranian story out there and an Iranian family. And a lot of people are unfamiliar with how Middle Easterners work in our culture and stuff. So I just knew that there was a shortage of that right now. And especially, in these short films for these classes, like having a Middle Eastern family kind of be the main part of this movie was going to be a unique thing. And so definitely I thought that's an opportunity, like Mal said, to showcase something that not everyone sees every single day.
And to challenge stereotypes that people might have about them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
For my screenplay, Cooking with Arlen, I definitely took a different route than a lot of the screenplays that were submitted. You'll see in the final, films, there's a lot of really heavy topics, like we've already talked about, equality and microaggressions, and there's stuff about like young pregnancies and drug addictions and, really like heavy things and topics. And so mine kind of goes astray from that. It's no A24 film. It's more like a Disney Channel original. And so I definitely took inspiration from like the shows that I kind of grew up watching, and like iCarly and Drake and Josh. Those are probably the biggest two that like go into mind personally. And yeah, and then I just remembered loving how Disney Channel never actually did commercials. I don't know if anybody remembers, but instead of commercials, they would have these like short little like mini episodes of these like random like documentaries or like animated things or web series and stuff. And so there was one called Leo Little's Big Show, where it was like a brother and sister who just made like short films and interviewed people and yeah, stuff like that. So that's kind of what Cooking with Arlen is based on, I guess, is just like, two kids having fun, and of course there's like a little sibling that always gets in the way. So
I wrote Ocean Street last quarter, and I hadn't written the screenplay before either, and I think I was looking for something to do that I knew about. I learned that you can't just kind of walk out the door and write like a Christopher Nolan movie that's going to naturally entertain everyone. You have to have a connection to it. And for me, that's in the relationships in this story, and kind of it's a coming of age story about, and the main character has characters all around him pulling him in different directions, and I feel like that's something that I want the audience to relate to. But it wouldn't have been enough unless we put it in the context that we did, which was originally supposed to be Santa Cruz, which is near where I grew up, but instead we did Cayucos, which is the exact same effect of the small beach town. And I don't know exactly how to describe it. I hope it describes itself when everyone sees it. But the aesthetic that we were using for this movie was kind of the reason we all wanted to work on it in the first place, I think. And I hope that the characters add some authenticity that everyone can relate to, regardless of their connection to the beach town. But yeah, if we reproduce the authenticity that we were filming it in when people are seeing it, then our goal will have been accomplished. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it turns out.
I think I'm one of the last ones to comment, but for On the Rocks, I had watched a lecture this past summer from Paul Schrader, the writer of Taxi Driver, and I think it was BAFTA or something, and he basically in this lecture he said to take your the thing that's really getting you down the most, and come up with a metaphor for it, whatever conflict you're having in yourself, make a metaphor for it. And last year was my freshman year. I'm the second generation to go to college, the first generation outside of my state. And since I was a kid, I've been sort of moving around. When I grew up in a high school, or a elementary and grade school that was on the west end of Louisville, which is the fourth most segregated city in America, it both by class and race. By the time I got to high school, I was on East Louisville for high school, which was sort of the richer area, just because those high schools offered a better education. And then now I came out west to Cal Poly, and it sort of always felt like I was, I don't know, running from the people that were around me to sort of better myself in a way. I went to better high schools that were in East Louisville than the ones in West Louisville, so that way I could get into a better school than my friends there and stuff like that. And it was sort of a selfish, like I want more type of thing. So the idea of just running until you can't was sort of what was tolling me.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask is that I know for many of you, this is first time filmmaking. So I'd love to hear if anybody has hopes or plans to work as a filmmaker, and if you don't, is there anything about this experience that you feel like you could bring into another profession that you're interested in?
I can speak on that a little bit. I'm a journalism major, so I'm not even, I don't even think we have like a film major per se here. So I kind of dabble in a bunch of different things. I'm a theater minor and a MAST minor, which is Media, Art, Society, and Technology. So basically, my idea behind that was kind of just having a bunch of backups and figuring out what I want to do as I go. I don't want to be tied down to one kind of career. And I feel like I can get bored pretty easily. So I want to be able to work on things that are constantly kind of evolving and changing. And so for me, having that theater background and having more of the filming aspect, I know I want to work in like TV or film in one way or another, whether it's news or Hollywood movies or being a makeup artist, even though I'm not learning anything about that in class. But I think that it's always something that intrigued me, and I know a lot of people in kind of the film industry kind of go everywhere, wherever they're needed, wherever a job opens up. There's actors that wind up becoming directors or people that work on editing. So I kind of wanted anything to do with that kind of field just because I love entertainment and I'm more of an artistic person versus someone who's more into like engineering or math or science. That is definitely not my thing. But I think when it comes to telling a story and entertaining people, that's something I'm interested in. So I can take everything that I learned from this class and my other classes kind of and put it full force into whatever job I wind up getting in this kind of industry.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback specifically off what you said about storytelling because I think that's such a massive piece of what we're like trying to achieve and learn more about in this class and through this process. But it's also very applicable to so many other different routes you can take for a career. My concentration is graphic design, but that's totally true for graphic design is that there should be, some sort of backbone of a story that at least you're trying to tell in what you're designing. I think that's true of photos, photography, video, and, writing, all sorts of different stuff where really you should have developed a story before you really sit down to work on the finished product of whatever that might be. And it's also what appeals to me the most about specifically the artistic stuff that I've been able to do, the design stuff that I've been able to do. I really enjoy when there's a story in someone else's design, and that's sort of what I'm looking for in my work as well.
Thanks, Josh.
I can speak a little bit on this too. I think that this project specifically has like opened my mind to like what's possible in filmmaking. Like I've always wanted to be a filmmaker for like almost as long as I can remember. So I think that this project has definitely challenged a lot of us, probably all of us in many different ways. But yeah, I think that like it's opened a lot of doors and like changed my perspective as to like I usually just make documentary short films and I usually just use analog film. So shooting digital and narrative has been like such a different experience. And I definitely think that it's something that I want to pursue more within my career. So I'm very thankful for having this opportunity, even though there's been so many constraints, but it's been such a pleasure being able to work with everyone and to be able to create something that is so different than what I'm used to. So
That's great. What's some advice if you guys were going to like tell future students, especially filming during a pandemic, what would be your advice to them?
I've kind of a unique stance on how the pandemic has impacted this project. I think that I think that the time constraint alone, and just the fact that we're college students, regardless if we're in a pandemic, the students in this class producing these movies are going to be ridiculously stressed. I think that the planning process and the collaboration initially probably would have been much smoother if we were in person. But I mean, if we have 4 or 5 weeks to do this, everyone's going to be shooting in those last 3 weeks, no matter what, and and we still end up making it work despite those restrictions. And I found that I've kind of forgotten what it would, or stopped considering what it would have been like outside of the pandemic after I reached a certain point. Like with that being said, maybe it would be significantly easier if we weren't in a pandemic, but I think that's something that like at least and I think a lot of my group have kind of just stopped thinking about, which has been nice. It's a bit of an escape from everything that's going on. So,
and I think that there's the opportunity to take for granted the opportunities to like work collaboratively on stuff if we weren't so focused on finding those times to meet in person as we can during this pandemic. I think that outside of that, sometimes that can get lost and it's sort of just part of the process, but it's because it's more of a focus that sort of brought a little bit more weight to the time that we do spend together, I think.
I think just in addition, one thing I guess I can speak for myself is that the biggest thing for us, or the most challenging thing, was planning and being able to adapt to what is happening in the world right now, because everything is so uncertain. So flexibility is super important. Like, I know this probably would have been a lot more simple if we were in person, and maybe if we had more individuals on our team. Like, our group specifically had 4 people, so we had to take on a lot more than I guess we would have anticipated before. But just through communication and working with one another, I think it's made it a lot easier. But yeah, planning and being able to adapt would be probably my advice.
Well, I just want to thank all of you guys for coming and kind of doing this Q&A and just helping our audience get a little bit of an understanding behind this class in general and the movies and all of that. So thank you, Randy and James, for putting this together and always just being such loyal participants of the festival. We really appreciate it. And I do want to give a shout out to the sponsors of this program, the Cal Poly Center for Expressive Technologies, excuse me, and the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies and Liberal Arts. So thank you guys. And Randy or James, do you guys have any just last words about maybe what the experience was like different for you guys in the pandemic versus a normal year?
Sure, yeah. So one of the challenges of teaching a class like this is figuring out how to deliver all the same amount of content to students, and in a way that they can understand it and then run with it and be able to meet together and get that equipment and produce films that are film festival worthy. And I have to say that a lot of the reasons that it works is because the students are so engaged and so willing to collaborate well together and work really hard. So really proud of the way that they stepped up and taken on not just this project, but the projects throughout the entire quarter, and never once saying anything about the pandemic or how difficult it is or the amount of time that they have. Just working and doing their best to create some quality narratives. So I'm really excited to see these at the festival.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're just really excited because for many of us, this will be the first time that we'll meet in person. The films are going to be playing at the Rock, so we're really so grateful to the film festival for arranging that for us, because it'll just be so nice after everybody's hard work, and also for some of us 2 quarters together, you know, virtually, to actually meet and watch the films with an audience in person. It's just, I feel like it's one of the most important parts of this class is not only that students are making these films, but they're making them for the SLO community. And now in this case, because the festival is virtual, so it's, you know, a silver lining to the fact that everybody can see the films. So I think that it just adds so much to it, to have that, to be making films as filmmakers would and for an audience. So
Thank you
so much, Grace.
Absolutely. Good to see you guys.
You
And thank
too.
you again. This is awesome. And I love that this is a part of the festival and that it's been a part of the festival for multiple years now. So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay,
welcome.
bye.